On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, in our excitement to bring in a couple of new guys in this year's draft, we should probably take a second to talk about the guy the Raptors brought in with last year's draft, Gradey Dick. Where does he fit into the future of this team? Is he part of the core? And what's he got to do this summer to make gains upon what he did as a rookie? We'll get into all that with Katie Heindl coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, June the 13th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. Great place to come hang out. Lots of new faces in there lately. It's a lovely place to come talk ball in a place that is not Twitter. So come hang out. It's wonderful. I can't think of a better pitch than that, frankly. And it's free to join as always. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc., on all your favorite podcast apps of choice. You can also go to YouTube and subscribe to the Locked On Raptors YouTube channel. When you do that, hit the little notification bell button, and that will get you a push notification sent to your device every single time the show is about to premiere or go live, which is a wonderful thing. Notifications that say Sean is talking. I can't imagine signing up for those, but please do. It's a wonderful thing, right? Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And let's get rolling here. We're talking Grady Dick on today's show. As the draft is coming up. We've been heavy in draft coverage, but obviously, there are guys currently on the Toronto Raptors who are important to the long-term plans as well. Grady Dick certainly figures to be one of those guys. And here to talk about Grady Dick is our pal, Katie Heindl, back from travel all across the land here after a couple weeks away from the pod. Lovely to have you back, Katie. How the hell are you?
I'm good. It has been a little while. Great to be back.
It's shorts weather now since last we spoke.
That's crazy. I mean, I was probably betraying everybody. I was wearing shorts. I told you. I texted you in May when it got really hot.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
Yeah, shorts are here. Shorts are here to stay.
Shorts have been here for me since like mid-April. This office I'm working in, pretty toasty. Every podcast I record is in shorts. Don't worry, I'm not doing the whole pantsless news anchor thing. I'm not that weird, but it's definitely a shorts kind of office. All right, Katie, let's stop with the funny business. We have Grady Dick to talk about. And look, interesting guy, I think. In the sort of discussion of this summer, what the Raptors need in the draft and free agency and potential trades, it feels like the sort of core of the team has been discussed as the BBQ trio, right? Barnes, Barrett, Quickley, and everything else beyond that. It's varying degrees of pinned down to the Raptors and their long-term plans. And it feels like Grady Dick has kind of gone a little bit forgotten in the discussion of the team's core. So let me ask you just like a pretty blatant, maybe sort of boilerplate question off the top. Do you view Grady Dick after one season in the NBA to be part of the Raptors core going forward?
I mean, I think core team, yes. Core feels a little bit early.
Sure.
And I say that with the caveat that it usually takes about 3 seasons for a rookie to kind of show who it is they're going to be in the NBA. There's like definitely skill sets that athletes add on after that fact, depending on which team they're playing for, which coaches kind of coach them through that and how they better specialize themselves. But I think the sense of who they are, about 3 season runway. So that's why I feel like I don't know that this core knows what it is quite yet. So I do think they see him with them, but he's like in this middle. He's basically like entering the halfway point of that fruition. So on the team, yes. Core, no.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm curious what you think this sort of first season that he had where it started off really poorly, right? Like every possible metric on the court with the Raptors at the start of the season, the Raptors 905 stuff, even summer league, it was painting a pretty grim picture for Grady Dick going forward. Of course, the famed workout regimen for a couple of weeks seemed to turn things around. Michael Grange had that great feature on sort of how they saved Grady Dick's rookie season. And I do think by the end of things, you look at his month of February where he was fantastic. And obviously, the team was kind of a misshapen mess in March and April. It's hard to really glean anything from that. But he obviously got better and stronger over the course of the season. He obviously got, at least a footing as far as like what his role in the NBA is going to be. Did this season encourage you when it comes to the idea of him being a core member of the team? Or based on what we saw a year ago at draft time when he was taken, everyone was all excited. He's wearing the glittery suit. Everyone's looking at him as maybe the best shooter in the draft. Like, did this past rookie season dampen or amp up your excitement that he might actually be one of the core pieces of this team long term?
It amped up because he became a real person to us, right? I think that's the thing.
Well put.
Yeah. The draft night antics, and I loved the, his fashion choices, and we got to see the sense of his personality, which we know was a big reason why the team wanted to select him as well. I think a personality that kind of maybe took a backseat this season necessarily so. But yeah, I think it amped it up because you see, what Grady Dick's actually going to be capable of, especially when he got his assignment to 905 and got to actually go and have some meaningful minutes on a basketball court. Got to see what he's able to do in that with like longer stretches of play out in front of him. And a rookie typically is not going to get something like that on an NBA court for probably 2 or 3 seasons also. So I think it fleshed, it's sad to say, like, it fleshed a person out. He was already like a whole person before he got here, but his game, even if you followed him in college, like his game was asked to change, right? From Kansas to Toronto. And we watched him struggle a bit with that. All of that, I think, was to be expected. But yeah, I think in general, my interest is always peaked when you get to see somebody get like a full first NBA season under their belt and see how they, react to it on the floor as well as off. And I think he took everything in stride.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he, there was a lot thrown at him this year. It was a weird season. I think maybe there was a little bit too much put on him expectation-wise in the first couple weeks of the season when he was getting minutes. He has that game against Philly in like the first week of the year where, he bangs 4 threes, and it's like, is Grady Dick like a guy already? This is amazing. And then like, that's just not how it always works, right? Like rookies, it's very rarely linear. It's very rare that the early high points are going to sustain long-term. And I think the fact that he persevered through such a bizarre start to the year, through so much struggle early on, where, my whole thing with him was like, I thought he was going to just play himself into the rotation because he was one of the 3 or 4 guys on the team that could shoot threes. And for that not to happen on a team that so desperately needed that skill set, like, I think that was a little bit troubling early on. But the fact that he persevered through it all and came through looking like a guy who's going to be a long-term NBA player who has, I think, the upside of being one of the single best 3-point shooters in all of basketball. Like, I think that's fair to say. Like, the stroke is incredible. The movement stuff, it's a very rare thing to be able to fly around screens and hit catch and shoot triples and run off the line and pull up from mid-range. Like, that's not a thing everyone's able to do as a shooter. A lot of shooters that we see in the NBA are just kind of those stationary, all right, it comes to me, I can knock it down when it comes here, but it's not creating advantages in the course of a possession because my gravity is so terrifying to the other team. Like, I think that's on the table for Grady Dick, and I think it's really cool that over the course of the season, the Raptors gave him a lot of room to go and kind of improve upon the very grim start to his NBA career. Katie, I want to get into on the other side here, sort of how you factor Grady into the offseason decision-making for the Raptors, particularly as it ties to Gary Trent Jr. Obviously kind of similar positions, similar skill sets. We'll get into that coming up in just one second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to go and buy tickets for your favorite sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, whatever it might be. It's all there for you at Game Time. Super easy to use, really easy user interface, and I highly recommend it. I use Game Time to buy tickets to basically every event I go to, and one event that I'm going to this summer that you should be going to as well, if you are also old in spirit, is Wilco at Massey Hall, baby. They're playing 2 shows early July. You can get tickets for like $55. The new Massey Hall renovations. It's beautiful in there from what I hear. Can't wait to go and see it for the first time. And Wilco is a wonderful band to go see at Massey Hall. So if you want to go see Wilco, you want to go see a baseball game, you want to go see any sporting event or concert, movie, comedy show, whatever it is, movies. I keep saying movies. You can't go to the movies with Game Time, but you can go to everything else, damn it. And you should go and check them out right now. You get the lowest price guarantee where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find something for cheaper somewhere else. It's all there for you, all in pricing, seat views. It's just the best app to go buy tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Back at it here with Katie Heindl. Just a quick reminder, Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 is your all-day streaming channel covering all the biggest stories in the sports world with our local experts and the local shows, and of course the national shows covering it all as well. Great coverage of the NBA Finals, Locked On Mavs, Locked On Celtics. Mavs going out sad, it seems. Go listen to sad boy Nick Angstad talking about Game 3 over on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7. Of course, the Stanley Cup Finals continue tonight. Great stuff from Locked On Panthers and Oilers over there. Locked On Sports Today, 24/7. It's something you should just have on all day while you work and help you procrastinate. Okay, Katie, let's get back to Grady Dick and the sort of where he fits into the plans this summer and beyond. I think if you gave the Raptors front office truth serum, they would say, yeah, we hope that Grady Dick is a starter for us in the next 3-4 years at some point. My question to you, Katie, is how do you factor in the sort of long-term place in the franchise for Grady Dick when you're sort of sorting through the offseason decisions the Raptors have to make with Bruce Brown and more notably, positionally, skill set wise, Gary Trent Jr.? Are you of the mind that, it's okay for the Raptors to maybe just sort of let Gary Trent Jr. walk in for agency, go get a bag from somewhere else, and just have Grady Dick kind of step into that role? Maybe he's the 5th starter next season if they're not all that serious about going to win. Or would you prefer they kind of take it a little bit more slowly with Grady Dick? Keep a guy like Gary Trent Jr. around. You can never have enough shooting, obviously. And, it gives Grady Dick a little bit more time sort of to take his lumps with the bench and sort of figure things out eventually on his road to becoming a starter, perhaps when Gary Trent Jr. moves on to another team after this next contract. And obviously, it's not just a binary thing where you can only have one or the other or whatever. But I do think that the sort of long-term avenues for the guys they view to be part of their team getting into their starting lineup is a thing you got to consider. Where do you kind of boil it down, the Grady Dick, Gary Trent Jr. of it all going into this summer?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that no decisions have been made yet. I saw some surprise, I think, online the last few days of the fact that Bruce Brown is still a Raptor. But to me, the offseason isn't really going to it's not going to truly kick off until the finals are done, until especially a team like the Raptors, the position they're in, they've got to wait, and see what some of the other bigger moves are and hopefully pounce on the fallout from those things. They're not in a position at all to be the ones dictating the big trades this summer, or any big moves rather. So that said, yeah, I feel like this will be an ecosystem where the two of Gary Trent Jr. and Grady Dick need to coexist, at least I think for the next season. I think that would be also best case scenario for the Raptors because they can, as you said, have the security of shooting and then have someone like Grady Dick developing up alongside, hopefully on an arc where he improves. He's who you're going to want to count on in the next few seasons. And then maybe if you want to let Gary Trent Jr. walk, you do, or you trade him. But yeah, it doesn't, to me, this question of is it possible to have too many shooters went for so long? The Raptors' main problem was that they didn't have any. Is a bit funny.
It is very funny. I'm a comedian, Katie, asking these ridiculous questions. No, I have made my stance pretty clear. I think bringing back Gary Trent Jr., picking up Bruce's option and either trading him or just bringing him back to be part of the team is probably the best move this offseason to kind of maintain some positional depth, to have just a lot of decent NBA players around. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think, you don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden, oh God, like Grady Dick is like our fifth or sixth man and we're leaning on him. Like, that's not fair to Grady Dick. That's not fair to really anyone. I don't think that's a smart move here for a guy who, while he had a lot of, steps forward taken this past season, is still very far from being like a positive NBA player. The Raptors got shellacked in all of the minutes he played this year, whether he was with, the starters, whether he was with the bench. Like, that's just what happens, right? 19-year-olds who have the bodies of 17-and-a-half-year-olds per Darko Rajakovic are going to lose their minutes in the NBA, especially on a team that was as bad as the Raptors were this past year. And so, yeah, I don't think it would be fair to say, all right, Gary, you're walking. We're not really replacing you. Grady, step up, buddy. You're starting. As much as I think long-term, the fit with him and in particular Scottie Barnes and Immanueul Quickley is really interesting to think about. I think that's got to be more of a slow burn thing to sort of eventually get to, as opposed to forcing yourself into it next year. And just giving him some opportunity to kind of work with the bench, some reworked second units with Kelly Olynyk out there. We don't know what they're going to do as far as bringing in wing help and defensive sort of insulation, but I think that's a really important thing too. Let me ask you this, Katie, like, do you, because of what Grady Dick is as a player, right? Light on defense, I think like on a per possession basis, guarding in isolation last year, he was like a bottom 5% defender in basketball, not super high volume. We know he's got the sort of instincts for team defense. And I do think there's like an average defender in there somewhere long term. But does your calculus of the types of players the Raptors should be targeting this summer, is it at all informed by what Grady Dick is and sort of the limitations he might have going forward, if you're kind of envisioning what this team all comes together like in 2-3 years' time?
I don't think he's even factoring, what I said earlier about giving him about 3 seasons, to mature and for them to even understand who they have and whether he's going to fit on the core. To that end, like, I don't think he even really factors that heavily into their off-season decisions. Just because it would be a tough thing to bank on, right? And this mostly depends on what the team, how they see themselves achieving next season. Do they want to be another mid-league team? Are they looking at the play-in as an end of season goal? Is the goal to just strengthen the core, get those, get that group of 3, someone like more help? Is it to get, I don't actually know. The more I think about this, the more I'm like, I don't know what they're going to do this summer. They could do nothing. They could just, stand pat on who they have. But I don't think Grady is like, he's not like the Scottie Barnes of it all. Do you know what I mean?
No, 100%.
Well, yeah. Not yet.
No, I think long term, it's probably a consideration. Like, if he's in your starting lineup, you probably want to have like an ace wing defender next to him. But I think that applies to most teams, whether Grady Dick is on that team or not. Having an ace wing defender, a cool thing to have. I think most teams would be in the market for that. And yeah, I do think the sort of bigger question is, how do these players fit around Scottie Barnes, as opposed to how do you make things work around a player like Grady Dick? And I do think Grady Dick certainly checks the box of that guy fits with Scottie Barnes. I am pretty bullish on that long-term tandem. I think we've seen over the years just like the effect of just having really good knockdown shooting off of Scottie Barnes in the form of Gary Trent Jr. When those lineups have been humming over the course of the years, like those have been some of the best moments of Raptors basketball over the last 3 seasons, is when Scottie Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., Pascal Siakam back in the 2021-22 season with a lot of Gary involved. Like, those were the sort of best moments of Raptors ball in recent memory. Having shooting around Scottie Barnes is going to be incredibly important, incredibly valuable. And I think Grady Dick certainly is capable of checking that box. And you figure out the rest of the sort of ancillary matchup questions and fit things down the line. But I do think, like, it's important as we all get very excited to bring in picks 19 and 31, and it's all fresh and new, and it's new guys. We love it. I do think it's important to kind of note that, hey, Grady Dick is part of this thing too. And, as things go forward, whether it's that he becomes a part of the team in the regular rotation or he becomes part of that like shadow core situation that the Raptors had last decade where they developed a lot of young players and eventually moved some of them to go and get better. I think Grady's certainly going to be heavily involved in whatever comes down the line for this team. Of course, Katie, he's got to get better at some stuff. We're going to finish off here and get into the stuff Grady Dick has got to improve upon this year to really make strides upon a pretty encouraging rookie season when it was all said and done. We will do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the single best place to play daily fantasy sports because it's as it should be. It's simple. It's not you against 1,000 other lineups or some expert who you can't beat because they spend their entire waking day making a perfect unassailable lineup. No, it's just you against the projections, and you're picking more or less on stats, and that is it. With Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. It's all there for you. When the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. The WNBA obviously rolling hard as well. You've got Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Asia Wilson and Brianna Stewart, all players you can make entries on over at Prize Picks. Go check it out. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDINNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app. Once again, that's Prize Picks in your app store of choice. Use the code LOCKEDINNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 with Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy, baby. And rounding out our chit chat about Gradey Dick here with Katie Heindl from Basketball Feelings and, all over the place. Katie, you've taken over the world, of course, Believer Mag and your weekly WNBA column.
Thank you. Good plug.
Yes. I'm all about the plugs over here. All right, Katie. Grady Dick, this offseason. We've been kind of doing this in a bit of a running series with Vivek and Jamar, kind of looking at what different Raptors guys need to do this summer to kind of take the steps forward that you'd hope for them to see in year two. Grady Dick, rookie year, obviously we talked about the defense. It waxed and waned a little bit. On ball, pretty troublesome. As a team defender, a little bit more encouraging. We saw the offensive rebounding instincts were there. We saw the off-ball movement and sort of knowing where to stand was very encouraging. The three-point shooting from the corners, absolutely lights out. He was in the top 10% among corner three-point shooters this season per cleaning the glass. That's a really nice thing to build on. But if you're looking at the sort of biggest improvement areas this summer for Grady Dick that you're looking for going into next year, what are you circling on the sort of the player profile card or whatever the hell it is?
I think it would probably be more of a comfort with physicality. We kind of touched on it. Some of that does just come with maturation, and physical growth. These guys are really young when they're rookies. The way that they look and therefore the way that they can move is going to change so much in the next few years, which is another reason why you can't bank them on being the athlete they're going to be for their career in their rookie season. So I think I'd be curious to see that. You kind of mentioned it, but just like the times he would look a little bit lost out there in space and not necessarily know where it was he was supposed to be, whether that was getting to his spots or just kind of like popping up as like a helper. Honestly, on either end of the floor, I'd be sort of curious to see his comfort level there. I think that would probably speak to more general confidence on the court. But overall, I was pretty hard in the times when I thought oh no, is he kind of in a bit of a rookie tailspin? Then he'd come back with a great outside shooting game, and you'd be oh yeah, no, he still has a lot of confidence. He still has a lot of finesse, those things that you wouldn't want to see someone like him lose. So I think building upon those, like he's already got a pretty strong foundation. It's just like finding a way to match his confidence with the things that the team actually needs from him, right? Like if this wants to be a very defensively minded team, and I'd say given what we're seeing in the NBA finals, that's probably going to be where a lot of head coaches' minds are this as they go into next season, right? Because it's ostensibly won Boston a championship. It's tough to say, but
that sucks. It's really, we could bleep that out.
No, you don't. I'm comfortable with it. I was wrong.
I'm not. It sucks, Katie. It's miserable. Watching that game last night, watching the comeback fall short, awful. Truly awful.
It's okay. Anyway, he'll need to step up in those areas, to kind of hang, not just in the NBA, but also with his teammates. But all in all, like, I think he's on a good track. I think we saw that this season. Again, I just think more minutes. Like, I wouldn't even, I don't anticipate that he'll be sent to 905 a lot this season.
Yeah, I doubt it. Yeah.
However, if he was, I wouldn't even, like, I would not look at it as a bad thing.
No, I don't think, like, organizationally they view that as a bad thing, right? Like, I think they do a
no, they don't. They don't. But I think there's still always this tinge, right? And it's like I don't think there should be, especially when you're a young player. It's the surest way to get minutes, and to go up against some like pretty fierce, like G League basketball is pretty physical. Like it's very scrappy. So it is a good for all the things I'm saying that I think Grady Dick could stand to get better at. It would be a good place for him to do it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, the defense, I think that's probably something that's going to be sort of a longer term project with Grady Dick. And a lot of it's going to be tied to physicality and just sort of strengthening. He's kind of a beanpole, right? You get him ISO'd against like, Jason Tatum goes and hunts a switch against him. There's not a whole lot he's going to be able to do to keep Jason Tatum in front of him. And look, that's a problem for most people in the NBA. So it's not any sort of, black mark on his ability. It's just, that's going to be, I think, a thing that sort of takes a longer time to, I mentioned, I think there's an average defender in there somewhere. I think that's probably more of a 2, 3, 4 year project. I do think next year, what I'd love to see is a little bit more sort of active participation in the offense from Grady Dick, because I think there's a lot there with him as someone who I think starting next season is probably going to really start to command the attention of defenses as a shooter. I think his shooting gravity, having the back half of the season that he did, having the reputation as a shooter coming in, like I think teams are going to game plan for, we can't let Grady Dick go off for 10 3-pointers in this game. Like that's going to be a sort of omnipresent threat with his game. And so with that, how does he adapt to that sort of evolving defensive coverage where closeouts are more regularly kind of, creeping in on his space? Is he countering those by driving off the line, and sort of can he get beyond that sort of 18-foot range where, to his credit, he was very good at taking that one dribble in, pulling up and making it look really easy. I think that's a nice piece for him to have. But for example, when you compare him to like Gary Trent Jr., Gary Trent like never figured out the next step from there, right? He steps into those mid-rangers. There's not a whole lot of rim pressure going on. I think Grady has a little bit more sort of playmaking instinct than Grady Dick does. Grady Dick has more than Gary Trent Jr. does. And so can Grady start to use the defensive attention that teams are going to pay him to get more rim pressure, get, sort of those sort of spray out passes going? I think he's a really interesting, like, live dribble passer. He's got some pretty good instincts for it, makes the next play really smartly. Is that a sentence? Who knows? I think having him be less of just sort of a guy that it swings to when he finishes the play with a three. Can he be like an agent of getting the sort of offensive machine going a little bit more? I think that's the thing I'm really keen in on, because like I think he has way more than one assist a game in him, and a close to 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. I think there is 3, 4, 5 assist nights for him because of the threat of his shooting. If he can parlay that, I think of guys who like Duncan Robinson was a really good example this year, right? A guy who was just kind of always this classic 3-point shooter, not to do the white guy shooter versus white guy shooter comparison. Sorry, Daryl Morey. But like, Duncan Robinson took all that attention he gets and parlayed it into a lot more on-ball creation this season. And in a Darko Rajakovic offense where everyone is sort of going to be encouraged to pass, dribble, shoot, I think that's a really interesting next step to look for with Grady. And I think it's there. Like he's got a head on his shoulders, man. He's a smart guy. I think he's a good passer. The interior finishing too. I think, where do you feel about, what do you feel about his interior finishing? He has these sort of acrobatic finishes, right? Where, to your point of kind of absorbing contact, it's almost a byproduct of not taking the contact. And it's like, well, instead of just barreling into a guy's chest, I'm going to do a TikTok dance and score with it. And he does it pretty well. But, do you think there's maybe just like a little bit more sort of directness to his finishing that can be tapped into as he gets stronger?
Potentially. I don't mind the finishes as they are now. I sort of love
fun as hell.
frenetic and weird because it's like also destabilizing for defenses, right? Like they're like, I don't really know how to guard or stop that.
Sure.
I'm gonna let this weird slinky guy go. So I think like some of that, will naturally change as he gets bigger. But I don't know, the way that you kind of watch him move and finesse, and he can be pretty quick. I don't really think that he's going to become, I could be dead wrong, but like, I can't picture him being the kind of guy who's just going to barrel through, like cut through defenses like a Russell Westbrook or something. Like he's just never going to be that big.
No, it's got to be more of like he's sort of getting skinny through gaps and stuff like that, right? Like it's not a physical brand of dribbling.
I like,
more of a
I find brand. That I love this. I love the physicality of just being able to cut through people and move through space how you want. Obviously, that must feel good as hell. But I think I love watching tricky finishes more because you're seeing someone figure out in real time what it is they can do with the space that they have with like available to them and how they can make their body adapt and move through it, which is very interesting.
Yeah. 100%. It gives him character as a player, right? Like it's the fact that he is that like dexterous and sort of has so much control of his body. I love the up and unders and the reverses and the sort of acrobatic finishes. It would be nice if he could be a little bit more sort of to the point with it sometimes as like a counter to, when defenses really lock in and are kind of prepared for his array of different finishes around the basket. But I do think it's probably going to serve him long term that he, has started his career not quite having the physicality to overcome the trees on the interior, and he's got to get creative. Like I think having a little bit of everything is obviously, kind of a fun end game to shoot for. Speaking of end games, Katie, I think that's the end of the podcast. We talked about Grady. He's cool. I'm excited about him. I think looking forward to year 2. I think there could be some pretty significant strides there. Hopefully he can drive some positive minutes when he's on the floor and the bench lineups make some more sense and they get some more Scottie Grady chemistry going and all of that. We will, of course, cover that as it comes. But Katie, anything you want to promote for the good people out there before we wrap up?
You mentioned it earlier, but my column at The Believer, Take the W, I wrote about kind of a little bit what we're talking about. In the discourse for the last few weeks has so much not been about basketball, like the actual game itself. It's like talking around it and the whys and hows of it. And honestly, to me, the discomfort of women's bodies and women just like being able to play with the competitive physicality that they always have in the WNBA. So I wrote about that. And then I did my favorite thing, which is just like break down as poetically as possible 3-second plays.
Hell yeah.
From like the women that are really standing out to me so far this season.
Amazing. WNBA's been awesome so far. And your coverage has been delightful over there, Katie. Really happy you have that weekly column, and everyone should go and read it. Everyone should go subscribe to Basketball Feelings. Exits continues over there as well. I missed being your hype man, Katie. I really missed it. Go subscribe to all of Katie's wares. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for supporting the show, for subscribing, following, rating, reviewing. That's not a word. We'll be back again tomorrow with Zulfi Sheikh from Raptors Republic. Does some great work covering the CEBL as well. We're going to do some dumb fake trades for the Toronto Raptors, some realistic ones, some semi-realistic ones, and some absolutely off-the-wall nonsense. It's going to be a great way to send you into your weekend thinking about them fake trades, and looking forward to that one very much. Until then, thanks for rocking with us. Follow, subscribe, rate, review. If I didn't already say that, I probably did. I'm really bad at these exits. Speaking of exits, mine are terrible. Bye. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.